The Ravens have a massive problem on their hands, and it has nothing to do with what happened on the field, as Rashod Bateman's future in Baltimore is suddenly a real question, and now the Baltimore Ravens have to figure out what to do with a player they just gave a 3-year, $36.75 million extension to not even more than a year ago. And with Zay Flowers, Jacoby Lane, Elijah Surratt, and post looking at that Minnesota Vikings preseason game, LeJohntay Wester, all making pretty strong cases this summer to be a part of that wide receiver room, Baltimore may have more options to look into than they expected in terms of the wide receiver position. So we're going to get into Rashod Bateman's situation and why it is becoming such a big deal for Baltimore Ravens fans. But before we get into today's video, I want to give a quick PSA that the Cincinnati Bengals Digest YouTube channel just hit 5.3K subscribers. If you are a diehard Baltimore Ravens fan, there is no way the Cincinnati Bengals channel should have more subscribers than a Ravens Flock channel. Make sure you keep hitting that subscribe button. It is completely free, and turn on post notifications so you never miss another Ravens update rumor. We're posting every single day and happy to provide this content for you guys. But in terms of Rashod Bateman, it is definitely a tough situation for Baltimore Ravens fans to look into when you look at the actual situation, because he is dealing with a serious off the field situation that could potentially lead to an NFL suspension. And according to reports, Rashod Bateman was arrested in Georgia on June the 3rd in connection with allegations involving an incident with his ex-partner, her vehicle, and the infant reportedly inside. And yes, this is still a pending legal matter, so I'm not going to sit here and speculate and pretend to know what exactly happened or what the NFL's decision on that hammer is going to be, because it is a pending investigation. But the Baltimore Ravens have acknowledged the situation. They said that they were in communication with Rashod Bateman. They've talked to the league office and are cooperating with the process as a whole. So right now, there is a lot of unanswered question in terms of the Rashod Bateman situation. We don't know whether Rashod Bateman is going to be suspended. We don't know how long the suspension will be, and we don't know what Baltimore will decide to do with Rashod Bateman in that wide receiver room. But here's where it really gets interesting for the Baltimore Ravens, because not even less than a year ago, Rashod Bateman had just signed an extension with the Baltimore Ravens. And if you looked at this group, you would obviously say that Rashod Bateman is going to be a major part of the offense. But now I am not so sure, because Zay Flowers, as we know, is our established #1 guy. In this entire training camp and early preseason, Jacoby Lane has really stood out. And we've been talking about Lane throughout the preseason and a bunch in these past couple of videos. And there's a real reason for it, because the rookie has been looking like somebody who belongs in the NFL coming out of USC. He's making these contested catches. He has a great catch radius. He's blocking pretty well, and he's continuing to earn more reps and opportunities through a week-in-week basis. And now ESPN has reported Jacoby Lane as projected Baltimore's one of their top receivers, either the 2 spot or the 3 spot. And this brings us to the biggest question surrounding Rashod Bateman as a whole, because what happens if these younger players for the Baltimore Ravens continue to make plays, especially those such as Jacoby Lane, because Bateman's 2025 campaign wasn't that good in terms of him being a football player that was providing that 1,000 to 1,500 yard pass catching ability. But I'm not saying that Rashod Bateman is a bad player. As we know, Rashod Bateman is one of the best players for the Baltimore Ravens in that wide receiver department. But last season looked like a lost opportunity, as he had a bit of a drop off. And now the Baltimore Ravens, a year after giving him that extension and making that financial commitment towards Rashod Bateman, it's very tough, especially with this legal matter that is currently going on. So naturally, the question starts to become, what does Baltimore do next in terms of that wide receiver department? But the Baltimore Ravens did pretty good drafting Elijah Surratt, as we know, and Jacoby Lane this offseason. And if Bateman ends up missing time, Baltimore necessarily does not have to panic, because as we know, Zay Flowers is in that #1 role, and you can give Jacoby Lane more opportunities as he is showing and developing. And you can continue to use Elijah Surratt and his pass catching ability, along with LeJohntay Wester bringing that element in the return game. And it is a pretty deep group when you really look into the Baltimore Ravens and that wide receiver department. And the depth could completely change if Rashod Bateman's situation gets handled in a way to where he will no longer be a part of the team, or a suspension will happen for a early part of the Baltimore Ravens system. Because if this was a receiver room with no good 3rd to 4th, 5th stringers for the Baltimore Ravens, there would definitely be a problem, and I would be making a potential trade video for the Baltimore Ravens in terms of getting a player who can take Rashod Bateman's ability, but I think the younger guys for the Baltimore Ravens should be able to step up in the case that Rashod Bateman will have to miss some time. But could the Baltimore Ravens potentially trade Rashod Bateman to a different team? There was a situation where the Houston Texans had been talking about trading for Rashod Bateman as a whole, and among just Rashod Bateman, the Texans, as they have been exploring some injury issues in the early bit of the preseason, Kayshon Boutte and Rashod Bateman were both players that were linked to the Houston Texans, and they're not looking to bring back former Baltimore Raven and known Houston Texan DeAndre Hopkins because they want a bigger receiver on the outside in terms of bringing that reinforcement. And Rashod Bateman could be a player that is on the move for the Baltimore Ravens in the event that he will be suspended or the Baltimore Ravens are looking to move on from him. But again, I wouldn't completely rule out Rashod Bateman being traded. As we know, the Baltimore Ravens just gave him a 3-year, $36.75 million investment, and this is a serious money haul for the Baltimore Ravens because you can't move on from a contract that simple, especially a 3-year extension. And then there's the other issue of Rashod Bateman and him having value. What do you get in return for Rashod Bateman? And if Baltimore is potentially trying to move on from Rashod Bateman with the possible suspension, you're probably not going to get the kind of return you're looking for in other cases, such as a Terrion Arnold situation, where you do not know what you are going to get in return, but it is based on the other team taking a leap on a player who is dealing with a legal situation. And what if another team calls for the Baltimore Ravens? What if it is not the Houston Texans and it is another team looking to use Rashod Bateman and his talents? Well, you can absolutely have that conversation in terms of Bateman being a part of the long-term plan of the Baltimore Ravens. And yes, the wide receiver room is very young, but it is all about the direction that the Baltimore Ravens are trying to move into. Zay Flowers is already established, as we know, and Jacoby Lane is emerging on a play-to-play basis. And we've talked about these other players like Devontae Walker and Elijah Surratt, but if these guys keep producing as a whole, Bateman could eventually be the odd man out as a whole, especially based on the dump-off that he had last season. And the younger receivers that we keep talking about for the Baltimore Ravens, such as Jacoby Lane, are really the bigger story for the Baltimore Ravens because Lane isn't waiting, Wester isn't waiting, and Zay Flowers especially isn't waiting, especially due to that extension that he just signed a couple weeks back. And these younger players for the Baltimore Ravens could really step up to where Rashod Bateman will be left out in terms of a roster building scenario. And if these guys jump him in the depth chart, there will be no reason that the Baltimore Ravens should hold on to Rashod Bateman and can look what they can get in return if this situation becomes bigger than it actually is. But what would I personally do with this decision? I wouldn't personally make any decision right now in terms of Rashod Bateman, as it is a legal situation and we're still waiting for things to come out and we have to let the situation develop. But I'd continue evaluating Rashod Bateman alongside these other young receivers for the Baltimore Ravens because they've been stepping up in the preseason. Because if Bateman comes back and stays healthy and has a strong season, Baltimore will have that weapon back that we know of Rashod Bateman. But if this situation drags on longer than it needs to, maybe the younger guys for the Baltimore Ravens are really going to step up and the conversation will change completely from a player such as Jacoby Lane just being a number 3 receiver to him actually being a 1 and 2 for the Baltimore Ravens alongside Zay Flowers. And I don't think that this is a little storyline for the Baltimore Ravens. I definitely think that they don't have a receiver problem. I actually think the opposite. I think that this group is very deep and has a lot of players who deserve opportunities for the Baltimore Ravens. But the question is simply what happens to Rashod Bateman and where does Rashod Bateman fit in this situation if he is suspended and post-suspension for the Baltimore Ravens. But that is going to be my take. Let me know what you guys think down below on the Rashod Bateman situation. Do you guys think that the Baltimore Ravens should explore some trade options? Do you think that they should keep Rashod Bateman? Let me know what you guys think down below in the comments. And if you enjoyed the video, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications so you never miss another video of Ravens Digest and these latest Ravens news and updates. My name is Alassane, and I'll see you in the next video. And until then, Ravens flock always.